As you begin the new school year and as you set up your gradebook in Teacher Access Center, it's very important that you have a good understanding of how eSchool calculates grades. This is especially important so that you're sure that your grades truly measure student learning. Why? Because when we know better, we do better, but when we plan better, we do our absolute best. So planning to have enough assignments, the right kind of assignments, to truly measure the student's learning is very important. The golden rule you must remember is that no test or assignment will count more than 1/5 or 20% of the 9 weeks average. This is a guideline you must follow, and this is in the Parent-Student Handbook. This is designed to protect the student and to be sure that no one grade dominates the overall 9 weeks grade. So one of the reasons to understand the grade calculations is to be sure that you do not inadvertently break this rule. How can we calculate the weight of one assignment? Well, eSchool actually has 4 variables that impact the overall worth of any grade. And we're going to look at each of these 4 variables so that you understand how they do impact that worth. The first is the category weights. The category weights are set up at the start of the school year by clicking on this Define link, which brings you to this categories page. If you don't come right to categories, you have to click on the categories tab. But this is where you set up your categories, and there are numerous choices. They're formative and summative. You could use the summative link. You can use the all work. And in this case, I have formative and summative categories worth 30% and 70%. The district has guidelines for courses in what their category weights should be. So before you go to set up your Teacher Access Center categories, make sure you know what categories and weights you're supposed to use for your particular courses. I do have another video that explains how to do this, how to set up your category weights. And so for the actual setup, you can watch that video. But let's talk a little bit more about these categories. What are formative grades? Formative grades are those grades that monitor student learning and provide ongoing feedback. These grades are used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. Formative grades may include homework grades, class grades, daily work, group work, a writing draft, or an outline, etc. What are summative grades? Well, summative grades are designed to evaluate student learning at the end of an instruction unit. The summative grades may include end-of-unit or chapter tests, projects, research papers, group presentations, etc. So what actually determines the value of the category weights? Well, you have some choices. Summative formative can be 75-25, 70-30, 60-40, or 50-50. You could have a mix of summative, formative, and a summative link. The summative link is explained in the next video, and it just sums up a bunch of grades to be worth one category weight of 10% in this case. Some campuses might use a summative only, and for some courses, the all work category is used. But once again, remember that high school and middle school core courses follow district-determined category weights. So let's do the math. Suppose my summative category is 70% and my formative category is 30%. How many summative grades must I have to follow the district 20% policy? Well, if you want to think about it, pause the video, but otherwise, the answer is if you had only 3 summative assignments, each assignment would be worth 70 divided by 3, or 23.3%, which is more than the district allowable value of 20%. So you must have 4 summative grades in this example. So the second variable that impacts the worth of a grade is the assignment weights. And these are a little confusing using that word weights again, but the assignment weights are determined by the teacher when you set up each individual assignment. Your assignment weight can be found right here. In this case, I did all the assignments as a weight of 1, which is really the best practice to use if you are not sure how it's going to impact your overall gradebook. However, the assignment weight can be used to make one grade worth a little bit more than another. For example, if I have homework assignments and I want my quiz grades also in my formative category along with homework, I might want a quiz weighted twice what a homework assignment is weighted. So that would be a good example of when I could use it too. Be careful not to make this very complicated. I've seen some grade books where some grades are weighted a half and others are weighted 75 and so forth, and that can get very, very confusing, and being sure that no one grade weighs too much. So when in doubt, use a weight of 1, but there are some occasions, depending on how you set up your grade book, when you can weight assignments more. So do the math. Suppose my summative category is 60% and my formative category is 40%. If I have 3 tests, but I count one twice, what is the value of that double test? Well, the double test would count as 30% of the overall 9 weeks grade, which is really counting twice the other 2 tests. Again, this would not be in line with the district policy. So be careful when you do double the weight of some of your assignments that you don't break this rule, especially in the summative category. So the third thing that determines the value of an assignment is the assignment point values. Teachers have the option of using the point value of an assignment, but this must be done very carefully. It further impacts the weight of an assignment. The point values are found right here on the assignments page, and in this case I used 100 points. It's always best practice to use 100 points because that is the least confusing for parents. Parents understand a 100-point scale. If you use 15 points for an assignment and a student has a 13 in the grade book, that's not a bad grade, but a parent may not realize that that 13 is out of 15 points and not 100 points. So sometimes it can cause some alarm on the part of parents if you don't use a 100-point scale. Also, you may inadvertently allow an assignment to have more weight than you intended, because a 20-point assignment counts 1/5 of a 100-point assignment. So by changing the point value, you've changed the worth of that assignment in comparison to a 100-point assignment. And there are some easier ways to weight individual assignments than using the point value. So let's do the math. Which weighs more, a 20-point assignment counted 4 times or a 100-point assignment counted once? Well, obviously, a 20-point assignment counting 4 times would be equivalent to 80 points. So the 100-point assignment counted once would have a greater value. The final way that a grade can be, the final factor that can impact the value of a grade is the number of assignments or assessments that you have. The total number will lessen the impact of each one. So in this case, you can see in this grade book, I have quite a lot of formative and summative grades. So this is a good amount of assignments to have. So no one assignment counts overly much in the grade book against a student if he happens to not do very well on that particular assignment. You want to have as many assignments as possible so that you can truly have a quality measurement of what the student has learned. If I want to view my assignments in another way, I can also go to the scores page, and there are some tabs here that I can click that I can view any of my categories. For example, if I double click on the S tab for summative, then I will view only my summative grades. Clicking on the all lets me return to the view where I see all my grades. So let's do the math. I have a formative category of 40%, which is made up of homework, assignments, and quizzes, each valued at 100 points, but quizzes count twice for the assignment weight. If I have 12 homework assignments and 4 quizzes, what percent of the overall 9 weeks grade is each quiz worth? Well, each quiz would have a value of 4%, and each homework assignment would be worth 2% of the 9 weeks grade. 12 homework assignments at 2% and 4 quizzes at 4% add up to the 40% of the formative category weight. How are weighted grades calculated for parents to view? In Home Access Center, this is what a parent sees. They will see the student's total points in each category, formative and summative, the maximum point values available, that percent for each of the categories times the category weight, and they see the category points. When you add up the category points, you get the overall average rounded up at this point to 90%. eSchool will only round at the very end of a calculation and not in between. So it's important to know that you don't round till the end. This is what a parent sees for the grade calculation. So let's talk about some questions. How many hundreds does it take to offset 1 zero? We are often cautioned to be very careful giving students zeros. Well, let's look at why that is. Suppose a student has 3 100s for their formative category or homework and then gets a 0. How many additional 100s would the student have to earn to offset his average of 75 and get it back to that solid A? Let's see. I'm going to enter 100, 200s, and we're up to 83, 300s, 400s, 500s, 600s, and now we're up to 90, but that's barely an A. So let's try a few more. 7, 8, 9, 10 100s would bring the student back up to a 93 average. So be very careful when you give students 0 because it has a huge impact on their overall grade. Is it better to have lots and lots of grades? Well, that really depends. It depends on what types of grades. It is better to have a lot of grades so that you can accurately measure all the students' learning and all components of what had been taught in the unit. But if you're just adding grades that are really not worthwhile grades, it's not better to have lots of grades. Is it better to weight some grades within a category more than others? Sometimes yes, for quizzes or for some homework assignment that is much more work than another, just to balance your grades, but just be very careful that you do this very knowledgeably and carefully. Overall, it's important to remember that how we grade is very important for our students. And no matter how lofty our espoused education goals, our grading practices reveal what we truly value.